Good evening. Welcome to the Dave Shove Memorial Midstream Reading Series. My name is Richard Terrill. I'm one of the four co-hosts of the Midstream series. And if you're a first-time visitor to our readings and you'd like to be on the mailing list to get the Zoom invitation for future readings, check out our website, which is midstreamreadingseries.wordpress.com. midstreamreadingseries.wordpress.com. We hold the readings on the second Thursday of each month. And also on the website, you'll find links to YouTube recordings of past readings. And this reading as well in a couple of days will be posted on the website. And before I go any farther, I want to thank Paul Matties. Thank Paul Matties again, our tech guy, running tech for us tonight. And, who would have thought that, almost 2 years into this, we're still doing this on Zoom. We're back. We were live I was live in September. We're back on Zoom. And without Paul, we just wouldn't be here. And you wouldn't be here. And while I can't push you to buy books at our book table that we would have if we were live on Lake Street, as in the old days, I encourage you to take the time to seek out the books of these writers. You know how to find them. And you know how to order them. And ask that if the readers would like to put contact information into the chat, websites, or links to your books, please do so. So buy books. Okay. I have a poem from my book. It's from last year. It's called What Falls Away Is Always Poems and Conversations. And when it's December, I get a chance to read this poem. And only in December, so I don't miss this opportunity. And it's about that Christmas song, "The Little Drummer Boy." And as a musician, there's a line in there that's always bothered me, and the line is that the ox and lamb kept time. And I wondered, if the ox and lamb kept time, why do we need the little drummer boy? I mean, the animals are doing fine, and it seemed to me emblematic of the way that our species tends to always put itself at the center of the action. The ox and lamb kept time, little drummer boy. And so it came to pass in those days that the animals were musical. Their cloven hooves, caked hard in mud and waste, could thump a hollow sound at a steady pace on the barn floor, muted in straw. They never rushed, never dragged against the steady progress of their beat, which was music to the heavens. It was only human that the animals, minders and tenders, shepherds, stable boys, thought they themselves played the principal instruments, whether pipes in the field or the drum of a child in a song taken to be true. For the humans in those times, as now, saw themselves at the celestial center, a kingdom that rules the kingdom of beasts. Wise men with gifts, angels on harps and strings, may or may not have been present in the scene, depending on your level of belief. But the lambs and the oxen, they are unquestionable, beyond symbol, beyond faith. It was a barn. We know they were there, keeping time steady, inalterable, out of reach of human hands that shaped and misshaped the very planet to which all children are born, holy or not, on that night or any other. The carols are wrong. It is the flocks that kept watch by night, who by instinct maybe felt a pulse we cannot feel, and by their presence tell us we are not the masters. Our first reader tonight is Michael Walsh, and Michael is the author of The Dirt Riddles, which received the Miller-Williams Prize, I think from the University of Arkansas Press, and the Tom Gunn Award for Gay Poetry. Earlier this year, Autumn House Press published Creep Love, his new poetry collection. He is also the editor of Queer Nature, the first eco-queer poetry anthology, forthcoming from Autumn House Press in spring 2022. Michael Walsh.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to see you here. And Brian and Jason, I see you both here tonight. Thank you for joining. I'm going to start off by sharing a couple of links to my books. As Richard mentioned, I happen to have one out now. And then next year, an anthology that I've worked on since 2015 is coming out. It's an enormous amount of work. And if it happens to be a topic that interests you, it's kind of like an encyclopedia of queer and trans poetry from the last 3 centuries of American poetry. So here are those links, if they're of interest. And I'm going to read about 8 poems from my current collection, Creep Love. And I picked out a couple of themes to read tonight. I want to read some poems about sleepwalkers and sleepwalking, and some poems about my mother. And because I have a fascination with cows, I can't do a reading without reading a cow poem. And I'm going to end with one for you all tonight. Let me get my document here. My book, Creep Love, is really a family book. My first book, The Dirt Riddles, was about the farm where I grew up and where I came out in 1992. But Creep Love is about the family that I'm from, and I'm from an odd family that people don't expect in the Midwest. I'll say first that my family contains many sleepwalkers. My grandfather was a sleepwalker, and unlike most people who stop sleepwalking when they are teenagers, sleepwalking is a somatoform disorder in my family. It's technically a kind of mental illness. They don't know why people do it. And my grandfather happened to have this trait very prominently. He passed it on to his sons, to me, his grandson, and to some of his other grandsons, including some of his granddaughters, though it seems to be a male inherited trait in the family. And one of the things that's unusual about being from a family of sleepwalkers is that everyone has stories about each other. And the people about whom stories are being told don't know these stories or even necessarily remember what they've done. And so I'm going to start with a sleepwalking poem about me. It's not something that I ever knew about myself, but something that people told me. The ghost story they tell about me. I never know when I'm shaking her, making her wake up to listen to whoever's speaking with my mouth. Those fools asleep in the farmhouse, the lights starting to bleed. The bulbs fill like IV bags. Zombie deputies are knocking on the cellar door in search of new freezers for head meats. I won't go back to bed. Mom and Dad have been buried alive with feeding tubes underneath the field. A man's glowing. He drives farm to farm, sprays soup through a hose from the steel tank strapped to his back. Everybody's gotta eat. I start counting out loud the number of traps set for werewolves who can't turn human, the headstones the family removes, replaces with styrofoam fakes. On the theme of my mom, I think about my mom a lot because she lives in Canada now, not Minnesota. Darn her, she got remarried and moved up there. But my mother and I have had a fascinating history ever since she got pregnant with me in 1973. And thank you for hearing this poem. This is one of these critical stories in my family. My mother is a pregnant teenage runaway. In Denver, she's going to give me up. Right now, she's walking along a highway in Montana, far from everyone who will make her keep me. A senior year mistake with an ex-con who's already hustling her look-alike little sister. Walking in the sun, she eats only my vitamins like war rations. Homeless now, she sleeps in a shelter, wondering whether I'm girl or boy, making lists of my names, good, respectable ones. Until one day she's walking to a payphone to call her grandma, says she can't. She's coming home Please forgive her. But I want her to hand me over to that childless couple, forget about me, change her name, keep hitchhiking to San Francisco, Portland, anywhere but back to what's waiting. The steel pipe he keeps in the burn beams. My father knocking up my aunt with 2 boys. The family shame of being the slut who slept with him first. I want her to ditch me, but she won't. She calls home, no one knowing if she's even alive, locks her cast-off life to mine. Coming from a family of sleepwalkers, I've heard a lot of stories over the years, and I've picked up stories from other people who have sleepwalkers in their families. This next poem is written in tercets, each one its own section, and I'll pause in between each one so that you can hear it. Sleepwalks. In search of sleep detectors, he pounds a hammer into walls, waking everyone else. One morning on her desk, a letter her own hand wrote in the German she can't remember how to read. He wakes curled inside the dirt hole his dogs dug as their bed. Sniffing his hair, they growl. Every night, more preposterous claims. Rats scratch inside their wedding rings. Zombies blog their children's growth spurts. Wild bees, she whispers, ear to the motel wall, tongue buzzing against teeth. With a sigh of relief, he pees into the rows of shoes of all his relatives, staying overnight for the holiday. Her camera full of pictures, the same corner of one room. At night, she watches the fossil of a ghost float there. In tidy whities, he paces aisles of the corner store, billfold in hand. The clerk rings up another raincoat. And then I think I will go to a poem from a little later in life. People are always curious about my mother, and I'll mention that after all the drama of my early childhood, one of the things that she did with her life is that she went to college eventually, and worked as a clinic manager for Planned Parenthood in Alexandria, Minnesota. And I think of this a lot, especially because I wanted to write a poem about what she was like as a young radical. I don't think she ever got to fully live that life because she got pregnant with me. And this is a poem from the farm, actually, the farm I grew up on, called Lives My Mother Lives Doing Chores. Lifting rocks, my mother, the private detective, catches the killer. It's the deputy. He's got another teenage girl. When he flashes his badge like a pardon, she shoots his hand and both measly kneecaps. Shoveling gutters, my mother, the first female Major League Baseball player, hits a home run into the stands. Her ball breaks the president's nose, and he cries like a little girl on camera. Refusing to apologize, she riles the country. Trying to sleep between milkings, my mother, the radical, punches a priest in the face outside an abortion clinic. She graffitis right-wing churches like boxcars and crashes their services with signs condemning God. She goes to jail happy. after the sleepwalkers make their rounds. We wake up to masses of newspapers, glued like windows to living room walls, tables set proper, marbles and dry rice waiting in breakfast bowls, fresh cat litter coating welcome mats, hoses left running in wheelbarrows filled with guppies, bras tied to limbs, underwear nested in branches. Our hopeless pranksters embarrassed by all they don't know they do, by the days that pass before anyone finds the tools missing, the chest tossed like trash, or the dead birds stuffed into socks, buried in the whites. And I have two more. The sleepwalker to his husband. I hope you won't find me wandering naked out the front door, carrying underwear like a lunch bag in my hand. But if you do, please get shoes and clothes, get them on me. Follow me wherever I go, the streets, the cars, and shady bars. Order me a drink, tell me you love me. Take my hand, don't turn me around. Walk this wanderer, whomever he is, back into his eyes. And I promised you a cow poem, so here it is. Town cows. Like oversized rabbits, they jump their fences for the streets, stopping traffic with their one message. They sack curb gardens, munch tulips to nubs. Chased, they bolt like deer, calm. They let total strangers stroke their ears. Raising their tails like spigots, they shit on everyone's sidewalks. At night, it's just the same. We find them lurking in backyards, gulping irises, their heads in the raised beds like troughs, their tails swinging, starting a rumpus. Thank you, everyone.
That was Michael Walsh. Kate McLamb is an 8th-generation Vermonter living in Minneapolis. She received an MFA from Minnesota State University, Mankato, and works for the public library. Her poems have appeared in New Ohio Review, Waxwing, and Willow Springs, among other journals. Kate McLamb.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me, Dick, and thanks, Paul, and the other Midstream hosts. I'm gonna read some poems. So I will do that. And I have physically printed the poems too. You can't go full technology. Okay. Some people are colorblind, but others just can't see all the gray in the world. They will tell you the Tin Man is white or maybe black. I will tell you he is silver and searching for his heart, or at least a stopwatch to tell him how fast it would beat if he could ever look the man he loves in the eyes or touch his flexing muscle. We all know love is a social construct. We all know love is a run in a pair of fishnet stockings. Imagine Rocky Horror the way God intended everything. Bleak until Frank's arrival. I want a movie that goes the other way. Everything in color until the trouble starts. That's my beginning poem. My next poem is sort of a type of ghazal, but not exactly. So maybe I shouldn't have told you that, but. February 1968. In history class, I always get a gold star, even if the star is blue and not gold. Blue is my favorite of the colors and the color of the furthest stars. War is never far away, never history. My grandmother, a gold star mother. In the Memorial Day parade, she pins flowers on her pantsuit lapel, goldenrod, hyacinth, baby's breath. She waves from the classic gold convertible like the queen of loss, like a black and white movie star. In the crowd, I wave back with the bouquet we will place on my uncle's golden name. Oh, and I was going to say before, I don't have a book, but anyone is welcome to publish my book. If you want to do that, you can just let me know. When the icebergs are gone, we will need a new metaphor. We will need a new lettuce to wedge, a new blue cheese to dress it, a new calf to fatten, a new house of slaughter, a new id, a new ego, a new Freudian theory, new knees and new patches for the holes in our blue jeans, a new boss, a new Springsteen, a new Boston, more like New Brunswick, new streets, new dust, new microbes, new chains to unrust our bicycles, new rain, new water, new ice to cool our refrigerators, a new cocktail, new twist of orange, a new bar and tender, new waiter to serve new old fashions, a new seat at a new table on which we will leave the tips of our tongues. I've been slowly working on a series of poems, which are Ars Poeticas, but they're acrostics. So it's a little form I set up to have fun with, and maybe you can kind of see it since we're on the Zoom. The setup, so the first line, it spells it down, and there's a break in between Ars and Poetica. So I'm going to read a few of those. Ars Poetica in a fruit bowl. Avocados are only the beginning, speaking relatively. They ripen to spoil. They rot to root perfection. Have you oxidized the fruit? Only earth could love the thrill, the scent. These roots reach from the pit I swallowed. Can you see me coloring gray? Can you smell ammonia faint? Ars Poetica. Are you someone who likes to feel sadness? Rings tell us how old the tree was when we chopped it. Sometimes they say the people we want are married, but people can be married without rings or to other things like Olympic rings or perfection. Everyone jumps through silver hoops, polishing them with the friction their t-shirts create. I too take my top off, rub my nipples against the cold steel. Can you hear the clink, metal on metal? I am someone who likes to feel sad. Ars Poetica in outer space. Am I an astronaut, or in reality, just a spaceflight participant stealing valor from our rising stars? Those portraited men and women holding orborculums which once contained their heads. even if they can't predict their fortune, be it riches or orthostatic intolerance, if they were once celestial beings, if only I had achieved a little greater. I have a friend who likes to talk about how his grandma owned an armadillo for like a very short period of time, which is kind of funny because he brings it up like a lot. This poem has an armadillo within it. Okay. Ars Poetica via Wikipedia. Armor-like skin is the main defense of the armadillo, a natural reservoir of leprosy. Also of service to science, the 9-banded armadillo provides good scientific subjects via its genetically identical offspring. Armadillos are prolific diggers, eating grubs and living in underground dens. Their armor is composed of plates and bone, its underside soft skin and fur. When startled, the Taliputus species rolls into a ball. Common roadkill, the North American species, jumps straight up and often dies. So that's the end of my Ars Poetica acrostic poem section of my reading. I have 2 more poems. Man in the Moon. There has never been a black man on the moon. There has never been a white woman on the moon. When Kubrick faked the landing, he was apologizing for the genocides. He said of the astronauts, they must be white, they must be men, they must be educated at the Harvards of the Midwest. They must have blue eyes, they must be hairless all over their bodies. They must be sad but look very happy. They must do it for me, they must do it for America. America is very sorry. America believes in God and believes he lives on the moon. The moon is heaven. Heaven is ours. We have been there. We have spray painted it with a star patterned red, white, and blue. We earned it with all our hard work, all those push-ups, all those jumping jacks, our bodies so strong we can support our own body weights. We can make love like victors. If we can't make our women come, they won't want to go to the moon. They won't need to. They will eat fruit. They will feed it to their children. They will feed their children to America. It will eat them and then feel sorry, but never apologize. Not even by faking the moon landing, which we all know is fake, because man's first words in the face of God are always, "Forgive me." This last poem is called Emanata. Emanata are the lines and directions that exist. I think I have a better explanation of this right in front of me. Exist in cartooning to, here we go. I'll read what I wrote before, like we do in these situations. So in comics, emanata are the lines and symbols which emanate from people and objects to communicate emotions and states of being. Emanata. We must be sure our breathing bellies, our genius ideas, our curiosities, the heat of the fresh-baked pecan pie, the rot of the dumpster, the smoke that rises from the cigarettes that we smoke behind the dumpster, the swiftness of our movements, the pop of someone else's champagne, the dirt we kick in anguish, the surprise in our eyes, and behind the surprise, fear, or maybe solid gold joy. Thank you.
That was Kate McLamb. Margaret Hasse is the author of 6 full-length poetry collections from New Rivers Press, Milkweed Editions, and Noden Press. Shelter, a collaborative book of her poems with Sharon DeMarc's paintings, responded to COVID-19 isolation. Hasse's most recent book is Summoned from last October. The National Endowment for the Arts, Loft McKnight, Minnesota Book Awards, and Right On Door County are among the entities that gave support and acknowledgement. Finishing Line Press will bring out Margaret's chapbook, The Call of Glacier Park, in 2022. Margaret Hasse.
Well, Richard, thank you very much. And my colleagues who read to us already today, thanks so much. Kate, that moon poem was really moving to me. And Michael, what you said and wrote about your mother was particularly special, I think. Thanks, everybody, for coming and joining us from the comfy, I hope it's cozy in your own homes. I'm going to read 7 poems tonight from my latest book. And my latest book is called Summoned. And you can see me holding it up here. And the title, well, you'll hear where the title comes from. I'll read the poem that introduces the title of this book. The themes of it are motherhood and my own mother and myself as a mother of sons of color, and white privilege is another theme, and the body is a third theme, I think, learning to live in this spirit and the body as one ages. I think they're poems of aging. Thanks all of you who are with us. What did I want to say? Oh, I wanted to say about the cover that it is a photograph by John Torrin of a public art piece at the Floyd Memorial. And the artist, Mari Mansfield, worked on a project called Morning Passage. And so this is a photograph of a photograph of a piece of that public artwork on the road there in the Floyd Memorial. I think that's what you need to know about the book, because I'll just read them, the 7 poems that I picked out for you without really much of an introduction for each of the poems, because I think they're pretty open-hearted and self-explanatory. Born into one body. Isn't it odd how we're born in one country and not another? Could have been any other color instead of what we are. We might speak Parsi and send our dead to the place of birds. Strange that we work at desks in cool rooms, not making clothes in factories, sweltering, being slapped or called donkey or dog. What if we suddenly changed into another? Disappeared into a labyrinthine souk, wearing shorts and a baseball cap, emerging as a man in a jabella or a woman with red embroidery of henna on her hands. We'd sit in the shade of a palm tree. We'd feed dates to a child never seen before, but surely, surely she is ours. This poem is called Another Day of Being White, and the subtitle is South Dakota. There are several poems, a little suite of poems, as a reviewer, James Cruz, called them, each called Another Day of Being White, but with a subtitle. And this is in South Dakota, which South Dakota happens to be my home state, where I grew up. Another day of being white in South Dakota. My husband ambles into the kitchen to help with the stew. It's plenty of meat and fresh beans. I say I have Indians on my hands when I meant onions on my hands. My eyes water with the odor of white rings around my fingers, or maybe I'm crying because the $2 I gave the worn down man with his cardboard sign was almost nothing. Feelings churn and I mistake words as if I'm laughing gas given to a woman with a broken tooth who could afford pain-free repair. My friend Roy says gaps and stubs of tattletale teeth tell of someone growing up poor. He smiled with his mouth closed. My tongue slipped onto Indians because deep into the night I'd read a book about Wounded Knee, then attended a workshop about the trauma of being white, how we carry in our bodies collective guilt. I twirl a confirmation ring on my finger. It's rose gold. It's rose gold grape leaves from a mine in the Black Hills where prospectors trampled treaties, making it possible 70 years later for my family to build a house on South Dakota soil in a land grab we didn't want to see. Sometimes my mother sends money to Pine Ridge Reservation along with secondhand clothes. And this is another day of being white, a dog incident report. My golden doodle puppy, apricot colored, looks like a dust mop on legs. Rosie adores everyone, wants to lick hands, is friendly indiscriminately with all humans in her orbit. Lucky little star, recipient of sunny attention from many strangers until today, when I erred, as the training book calls it, let out her leash 5 feet and unheeded her dash through the doorway of a bus shelter where a man sat slumped smoking a cigarette. When she came at him, he leaped to his feet onto the bench the way fire jumps, his dark eyes on her, his face a rictus of terror. Was he yanked back to facing a mouthful of guard dog's teeth, or to a traffic stop with canine cops who call Black men dog biscuits? Maybe he'd been warned of feral dogs and rabies. And need I tell you, I'm a white woman in a mostly white neighborhood, and like the puppy, I'm used to being liked. He is a Black man, uninterested in the apology I try to make from a distance. Am I wrong to make this encounter about race? Could he just be a guy with a primal fear of dogs? Michael read a poem about a cow. Did you say, I think, that you always read a poem, at least one poem in your readings with a cow in it? I am going to read a poem with a moose in it, and I'm calling the poem My Moose. A moose boulder rose from the lake, water poured from its back and shoulders, taking massive shape. A moose waded into the shallows of green water, his face like a shovel of coal. Nothing rushed his majesty, my moose, not tourists chatter on walkways, cameras snapping, not plop of turtles launching from lily pads. As if alone in the world, the moose did not turn his head, stepped onto shore. Everything grew silent as he passed through tamarack and scrub pines, disappeared toward deeper forest. Over the years since that sighting, when harassed by daily life and unanswered requests and my shortcomings, I remember the dignity of that moose, how he moved like a god who knew the weight of his antlers, not as weapons, but worthiness. Another day of being white, summoned. One early morning with a few strangers, white, black, brown, I walk in silence to the crossroads where George Floyd died. It's filled with balloons, flowers woven into blankets, stuffed bears, and among many, this homemade sign. All mothers were summoned when George Floyd called out for his. My thoughts are with my son, who sizzles with fierce words, not just for the policeman who arrested him after curfew, handcuffing him with zip ties. He's also angry with me because I adopted him, or maybe because I'm white, like the cop, and he is brown. He refuses therapy, is moving out in the middle of the pandemic with no plans of where to live. At home, in another shadowy dawn, a family of crows argues. Soon it will be light enough to see how the maple hangs her head over the grass. I can't imagine the future for my son, so I look backward to see a small boy's beautiful body walking into a swimming pool on tiptoe. As the water gets deeper, he points his nose up like a fox, smelling the air. He has always been audacious and brave. It's something to hold on to. This poem is called simply Grief. And I'm thinking of Kate's marvelous line, I'm someone who likes to feel sad. Someone who likes to feel sad. I don't know if that's true about the narrator in this poem, but it's called Grief. Green tea in the night before first light. It's early, even for me. How to hold the day in my arms like a day-old baby struggling to survive, her curled fingers tiny as wren's feet. I dreamed my dog smelled cancer in my throat. I dreamed my son was back in his room playing solitaire and not in a jail cell alone, his phone card spent. I know how one hand holds the other, orbiting each knuckle with a thumb. I'll do what I need to do. I'll fall softly as light rain on myself. And I'll end with this poem called Red Dress from the third section of my book, which has more to do with aging, I think, than anything else. The adventure of aging, I think of it as quite an adventure. And this poem goes like this. Red Dress. In the back of the attic closet, on a rack of old duds for Goodwill, a dress still hangs, brief and bright, pert, a ruby coronation. A man at a swing dance whispered, "You shine in your orbit," as you twirled and the skirt fanned out to your thighs. Later, you leaned back on a hot car's hood to drink a long and starry kiss. In a mirror, when you hold the dress against your figure, its svelte shape won't stretch to cover you, wide where you used to be slim. Parts of you that lifted and were light are now among fallen things. You could just keep a swatch of fabric to pin in a picture frame with a bit of slippery wedding gown and a snippet of baby blue flannel. But you want the memory whole of being wrapped in the silk of a red hot dam of a dress. And with that, I'll close my part of tonight's reading with thank you to those who put on this series month after month, including Paul, who's done this, our Zoom master for a year and a half, and our 4 different coordinators of the series. And tonight it was Richard. And thank you, Richard, for the invitation and for your introduction and for your poem as well. And now I pass it back to you.
That was Margaret Hasse. Ed Bockley is the author of Real Cherokee People, World, and Mitochondrial Night, recipients of the American Book Award Asian American Literary Word Award, Members' Choice, Minnesota Book Award, and Penn Open Book Award. Lee attended kindergarten in Seoul, South Korea, and teaches part-time in fine arts at Metro State University. He is the co-translator of Smiling in an Old Photograph by Kim Kai-tek from OHM Editions and Rain Taxi Books, which came out in November. Ed Bockley.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard and Paul, and all the other readers. This is I love the different voices, and I'm just very inspired. Thank you, Michael, Kate, and Margaret. This is a book that came out last week, edited by David Murrah and Carolyn Holbrook. It's called We Are Meant to Rise, published by the University of Minnesota Press. It's kind of writers' responses to the last couple years. And I have a piece in it. I'll just read that. It has 23 short parts called Pandemic Love. 1. Past midnight, as if drunk on moonlight, at least 3 birds in several trees keep conversing so boldly you could roll the dizzying textures of their notes up into a map where poems of joy and lament, folded laterally, then longitudinally, get pressed and sent off in breeze-sized envelopes to 1,000 other species with little hope of comprehension. 2. Lately, I also eavesdrop on the encoding far below my dreams. So far, I've learned I don't want to die any more than all songs and laughter want to end. Yet I don't want to live forever. I'm saying I want to keep traveling this archipelago of life and death, leaping freely from one small moment to the next. I want to sleep peacefully inside each of my flaws without first having to get sick. Whatever makes us smile, hug, kiss, share food with beloved strangers, invent songs, and sometimes even belly-aching jokes of death is also contagious. In fact, everything but the physical body dies without this. 3. I saw proof of all of this in the white cop's calm and peace. 4 centuries of ghostly granite statues holding down his throbbing American knee. I heard it in every parent's contemplation of late night sirens afterwards for weeks throughout our city. In the hospitals rupturing excess bodies out windows, I smelled a nation of cinder blocks, motor oil, and acrylic smoldering in each direction from and including the charred 3rd Precinct police station here in South Minneapolis. After standing with my daughter at 38th in Chicago, the corner of George Floyd's murder, 6 blocks away from where her life came into being, for a whole day, I couldn't eat. 4. At 4 years old, my daughter observes her raw, re-washed hands, asks thoughtlessly if rust can grow on songs. She doesn't know exactly where reality begins and ends. Her consciousness contains innumerable sprouts and tiny petals and bold tendrils. One day I'll explain that our American president, when this pandemic began, had previously starred in his own reality show in which he played a boss who capriciously terminated people. Eventually, I'll also mention that other American president from a generation or two before, a B-movie actor, best known in Hollywood for his supporting role alongside a chimpanzee named Bonzo. How that pandemic's virus called AIDS in the 80s was rumored to have originated from sex with monkeys in Africa as CIA-sanctioned crack first hit the streets. But for now, she's still too young to distinguish reality from fantasy. 5. Within months after the Spanish flu of 1918, people returned to maskless hugging and communal coffee, lemon phosphates, and beers. The reality and fantasy of modernity merged once again, and it was as if that plague had been a dream. 6. Cicada killer wasps are thriving during this summer of sirens. My daughter and I watch as one stings its victim on a quivering tree branch. The predator then drags its winged prey, whirring and flailing down into its underground lair to lay eggs inside the victim's immobilized body. We rise from our knees. I listen to all the cicadas' screams throughout history. Up and down the boulevard, these terrestrial wasps' myriad little dirt mounds resemble landmines on otherwise immaculate lawns. We move on homeward, later passing the Pioneer and Soldiers Memorial Cemetery, where African-American soldiers, by some accounts hundreds, from the Civil War are buried. Just a few blocks from the Little Earth housing projects for urban Native Americans in, uncoincidentally, the 3rd Precinct. She stops to re-Velcro her sneaker and wonders aloud where all the endless sirens are going. I don't say to leave, or that according to Plato, there were 3 kinds of sirens who, through beautiful and enchanting songs, would lure passing sailors to sleep, then murder them. Celestial sirens, generative sirens, and purifying sirens. 7. Whether or not in masks, few people on the street smile anymore. Eyes both eager for and fearful of other eyes. Elderly in care facilities raise a hand to their windows as if already ghosts. Rabbits, cowering among brambles, wait for a hawk to leave its high, sagging branch. A family of 5 raccoons holds evening traffic up along a Mississippi River Parkway. All night, birds keep experimenting with new forms of poetry. 8. As a boy, I was wary of how good nail polish remover or gasoline could smell. Later, I learned of lotus eaters, addicts, children in Russia who have a plastic bag and nothing else to hope for their souls. I learned global warming could mummify the earth, that plants and animals, even dinosaurs, comprise the fossil fuels we all now gorge upon. 9. A million human beings could drown inside their own lungs. To the earth crescendos, as the earth crescendos its wild song. 10. Tonight, non-emergency traffic has thinned to a whisper. Reportedly, abusers are going crazy with rage, or is it guilt? Some people demand the unhinged be locked up or medicated. Counselors speak with them for 50 minutes each week on a computer screen. Spiritual leaders on TV pray for clouds to descend and wake us forever with their giant wings. Still others believe that the deeper you research everything, the more troubled you become, and the more adept you become at diagnosing everyone. 11. A voice online speaks of a long overdue human spring cleaning. His twangy accent is unlike those on public radio or cable TV. His dark web observations hidden by a sarcophagus's hieroglyphics of code and firewalls. It's about population pruning, rasps the man. If you can't stand the heat, you keel over in the kitchen. Meanwhile, across the free and open airwaves, most journalists and newscasters sound as if their words and information to the contrary of the most powerful man in the world were slingshots filled with pebbles instead of stones. 12. Between propriety and property, which is more indispensable? If corporations can have rights, what about living, colonizing pathogens? 13. The other week, I stared for 20 minutes at a large bur oak across the street. I stare a lot lately. Its wide largesse of leaves swirled and spun in the wind. I stared and stared at its majestic indifference, while sirens and rubber bullets fired by police at protesters cracked and lashed less than a block away from our home. Elsewhere, business owners with long rifles defended their produce, pho, and jerk chicken because the absent cops seemed to be trying to teach everyone who protested against corrupt cops a lesson. What lingers is not the people with rifles and masks, nor the persistent burning of plastic and chemicals, nor the innocent citizens on their porch past curfew who got pepper sprayed, but the giant bur oak's timeless diligence. Short of a wildfire or Armageddon, the tree will keep transforming sunlight into food and energy for itself and other trees connected to it through an underground communal network of roots. When another tree near or far in the network gets blighted or infested and begins to fade, the other trees send forth more nutrients to the struggling one in need. When a blighted tree goes dark, the others send energy for weeks, even months longer than we do flowers or daily grace to our deceased. How to teach my child that within each and every seed's ancient technology is not science, but poetry. 14. As a writer, you better not always know what you mean, a middle-aged artist friend reminded me from his home where he was quarantining. Just live your life and work as if you're either in or out of sync with the universe's natural unfolding. Over bourbon, inside our respective homes and screens, we spoke for 3 hours about the necessity of an artist to love, to be obsessed with finding natural beauty at the heart of the grotesque, and the grotesque at the heart of all human beauty. Like ultraviolet light, art can illuminate or burn. 15. On the phone, my aunt reports a third friend from church has passed away from what started as a tickle in the lungs. I find my eyes once again falling onto the bur oak across the street, its boughs faintly bobbing. As wind cleanses its leaves, I recall a different oak I once visited near Atlanta. Historically, some nights black sharecroppers would find the strange fruit of hanging bodies. By day, white children loved to climb the big oak's limbs. At that time, I learned how humans evolved over eons, tangled and snoring high up in the branches of trees to guard us from predators while we slept. Hence our primal fear of snakes, especially the calmest, most methodical ones. They put him to death by hanging him on a tree, but God raised him on the third day. Acts 10:39 and 40. 16. After receiving the news, I send flowers, then click in search of my artist friend's funeral photos online. It feels like walking alone down a faint path through thick woods where all the twigs underfoot are not twigs, but bones. 17. A virus replicates because it can. Humans replicate because 18. But where did his spirit go? My daughter asks. May, then June, now July has almost come and gone. We wander from the corner where George Floyd was murdered down along the lane of hundreds, maybe thousands of bouquets sent from all over the world. We stop 1 block north in the open lot in the grass where 132 gravestones made of cardboard, paper, and plastic by artists and inscribed with the names of murdered lives rise up, swaying slightly like a chorus in the evening wind. Is he in the sky like your friend? She asks. Meanwhile, dozens of other people in masks holding phones, candles, and lighters pay their respects. Or maybe he comes here each night because it's not lonely for him, she says, tightening her grip. Maybe, I say, lifting her up onto my shoulders as the darkness clings to our clothes and skin. 19. You are healthy, strong, and despite everything, hopeful. You are someone's father, someone's mother. You are someone's son, daughter, child. You make art in your own way, in private, and sometimes when others you genuinely love are around, you sing. You like to laugh. You wish you could cry more sometimes, though intellectually cynical, at your core, hope more than habit gets you up each morning. Or at least you believe life could be so much more creative, so much more richly pleasant for everyone. You open your eyes. Is it despite or because of all she's observing in the world that on mornings when your daughter rises with the sun, her spontaneous ad-libbed songs contain a beauty as old as the smell of rain? 20. When Thomas Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence, he was 33 years old, the age of Jesus Christ when crucified. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, wrote the owner of 200 slaves at his home in Monticello. These words transmuted through his quill's fading fingers like static-laden voices and music a century and a half later to crouched, wide-eyed listeners to the first radio. The spirit of true poetry radiates, always light years wiser than its pen. 21. I saw a tree. It was speaking to 3 passers-by in masks, one holding a camera. When finally they left, I approached and stared for 20 million years. It came and went over and again. I did too, from particle to amoeba to cicada to python to angel to seahorse to demon to virus to bat to horse to human. In a wild and vast bestiary of blurs, like bacteria inside and all around us, without which we would die. Maybe we come and go too fast for trees or even God to perceive us, though sometimes in fleeting glimpses, we appear in their dreams. 22. At high noon, the granola my daughter has made almost sizzles on its plate. We leave it with the other items on the table and move on. This summer, hundreds of tents have appeared like mushrooms and wildflowers in public parks all over the city. One such encampment of a few dozen or so houseless people, including families and children, has recently gone up not far from our community garden plot. You can hear them laughing, crying, talking, sometimes arguing, sometimes playing music or drumming. Where? Says my daughter. Here? Sure, I say. We are planting kale and spinach, soon to harvest the perilla. Meanwhile, sirens keep ruing in the distance. Back home, we blanch, marinate, and season the leaves, garlic, plantain, and other panchan my mother, a child war refugee, once taught me how to prepare. At the time, it seemed like art, a superfluous novelty. 23. I know a new kind of longing is breaking through even the oldest longings deep within you. It feels frightening. It feels free.
That was Ed Bockley. Our next midstream reading will be January 13th, second Thursday of the month. The host will be Don Brunkwell. And the readers are to be Anthony Ceballos, Alice Dugan, Jim Moore, and Dorothy Schlesselman. Next we have our free-for-all. Paul will unmute us, everyone, and you can respond with questions for the readers, comments, appreciations, say hello to your friends, whatever. Stay with us as long as you like. But before we do that, one more Zoom round of applause for tonight's readers: Michael Walsh, Kate McLamb, Margaret Hasse, Ed Bockley.